Eric, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, thanks for having me, buddy.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into your journey and your story. We connected through Chuck, and I always say a friend of Chuck, he's a friend of mine. He's somebody that I trust to the core, and people who listen to the show know that. So excited to dive into who is Eric. So why don't we start out with who's Eric Creekmore today, and then we'll break down how you got there.
Yeah, man. Yeah, Chuck's a great guy, and stop to think about where I am today. I mean, I'm just a bowl full of a lot of mistakes and just learning things the hard way. And one thing I learned early in life is how to deal with adversity. And so over the years, from sales to leadership, I think I've built some qualities that are transferable in the business world that a lot of people struggle to probably learn or have. So just quick background on me: I played, Division I football at UCF. Then after college, I got into sales, life insurance sales, and from there, just really just was probably one of the best, I think, at least in our company with selling, and then popped into leadership. And over the last 10, 15 years, I've scaled that agency to a place where it kind of runs itself. And now I just really focused on my new tech startup.
Yeah, man, for sure. So let's talk a little bit. You talked about, adversity, and you're somebody who over time has been able to build adversity. Talk to where that began in your life. What's the kind of the tipping point to be like, I have to become a fighter in my lifetime? Like, what happened?
Hey, what's funny is I grew up playing sports, so I think that's always the baseline of adversity, team sports. And a little kid going to football practice when you'd rather be at home, probably eating jelly beans or playing video games. And my dad, forced me to go to those 2 days, and I think that was the good foundation. But I think later in life, probably a little after college, my father, he dealt with some mental illness challenges, and put really the family in a position to either really be broken, or I had to make a decision. Or it really wasn't even a decision, it was just action to step up and be the man of the household. And that was, I think, the most pivotal part of my life. Really made me understand that I wasn't just a kid, and I couldn't just let things happen. I had to take control of my actions. I had people that relied on me, that I needed to step up. And then that led into leadership with, business and, sports, and, just my whole friend circle. I've always just been kind of like the rock, if you will.
Yeah. It's so fascinating. I always say when you lose a parent, whether it's physical or just disconnect at some point, when you're still considered young, right? You said a couple years out of college, like that's still considered young. I see people go down two paths, right? It's like that story of, the two brothers who their father was an alcoholic, and the one was super successful, the other one became an alcoholic. And they asked both of them, how'd you become successful? Because my father was an alcoholic. And the response by the alcoholic was, I'm an alcoholic because my father was an alcoholic, right? It's being proactive instead of reactive. Do you believe that sports was the thing that built that inside of you to react the right way?
I think so. Yeah, it was. I think there were two things. One is, taking action in general. I think a lot of people, especially in this day and age, don't have that natural instinct. And I grew up like a boy. Like I grew up fighting. Messing around, playing sports, and it's just like having that innate action just built into me, that I didn't have time to think. And then also too, just growing up with good values. I wasn't born into a very religious family, but my parents instilled great values and discipline into us. So I think, I just had some good foundation, a lot of timing, and just I'd always been in a position where it was like, things were easy, but I did hard work, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. You talk about, moving into a role of leadership with your company that is now, running smoothly on its own, which is always a beautiful thing when you can step back and focus on newer passions. And we'll get there. But I want to talk a little bit about the importance of leadership and leading a team a certain way. What are some of the tactics that you've used to build your business in the sense of where it is now and continuing to keep a team intact where you can step away from a successful business and it continue to run?
Well, first thing is you gotta have the right people. And I built my business originally. I was making a bunch of money, and um, I had friends and family that weren't. So, now we look at it as recruiting, but back then, honestly, I was just sharing an opportunity that was able to provide me a certain lifestyle and freedom. And, luckily that was my core group that I built around. And, getting people to trust you, I think is probably why there's so much turnover, because that process takes a long time and it takes a lot of effort for someone to trust you with their livelihood. And then you've got to lead from the front as well. And I think I did really good at that. I was always, the one to jump out and do it and show it. And always falling back on self-development, doing hard things, putting myself in a position that always stretched me, if you will, and making sure that I was always in the right room, with the right people, the people that were above me that already had built successful agencies or businesses. And I think that would just go back to finding the right people and then leading from the front, really leading with that servant heart, knowing that it's not just that person that you're hiring, it's their whole family that you're actually responsible for. And knowing that you're going to make mistakes, knowing that you're probably going to have to build a couple of different teams. And then, really getting into communication was a big one for me. Like, I was not taught clear communication and empathy and all of these things that I learned the hard way. Actually, probably one of the most pivotal books I ever read was Crucial Conversations. And, just going into a conversation that I would normally get emotional in, knowing prior to that what I wanted the outcome to be before I actually entered into that conversation was a complete game changer for me and my business. And just, earning people's trust and being able to communicate properly, I think is a big thing with building a solid foundation.
For sure. And you talk about getting in the right rooms and surrounding yourself with the right people. I believe if you surround yourself with the right people, your your path to success is a million times faster. It's a million times easier. This is what I talk about from stages. How do you know that you're in the right room? And then how do you gauge who you're choosing your time with, right? Like I always just say, for me, it became natural because I have a really sensitive BS meter. So for me, it's been like, okay, cool. Like I can find out very quickly if you're a genuine person and somebody I want to spend time with or not. Now, do you have a tactic or a way that you can make sure you're spending the right time with the right people?
Yes. I have I guess the slogan I don't know if I came up with, but I say it often is don't be a taker. Right. So, I'm naturally just love to give, and I don't know any other way, honestly, to a fault a little bit, but you just know whether it's financially or emotionally or, whatever it is, these time suckers, people that just really either don't get it or they're purposely self-centered to where they just can't give it back. That's a Now it's become a very instinctual thing for me to know who those people are. So that would be that. And then as far as getting in the right room and with the right people are, just looking at, first of all, their circles they run in and the things they've accomplished and the way they treat people. Is that what I aspire to be? And if so, by proximity, I'm very, I guess low key when it comes to building new relationships. I'm luckily I surround myself with super connectors, I call them, people that are really good with networking. I'm not the guy that's going up into a networking meeting and shaking everyone's hand. I'm usually the guy that's waiting for someone to say hi to me. But I hang around a lot of those guys, so they naturally connect me, and then I'm just really good with follow up afterwards and making sure that I check in on people that I had a genuine connection with, and making sure that that relationship keeps moving. And I think it goes a long way. It just, I was actually, someone asked me what my superpower was, because I'm, very dialed in with accountability and, persistence and showing up, all this stuff. Like, but my actual superpower is people confide in me, and disclose things that I don't feel like they disclose to anyone else, because I'm just a steel trap. And you can
Yeah.
do a lot with that. It creates a lot of influence. So yeah, I guess that, be my tactic if I had one, is just being a good listener, not too too forward, if you will, in a new relationship.
Yeah, I think, approaching something not from desperation, right? I love that you said, I'm a natural giver. I actually run a mastermind of 6 and 7 figure entrepreneurs. And the number one rule for the mastermind is give more than you receive. And as I'm interviewing people that want to come and join the mastermind, I just pay attention to their body language. And I say that's the first rule, right? Because they'll tell you very quickly how needy they are or how much they just want to get in to serve themselves and so on and so forth. So I love that you said that rule. Now I want to talk a little bit about your new venture and the thing that you're building and working on and currently fundraising for, if that's not the right word, but raising capital for. But why the massive risk? Building an app is a huge risk. I've seen it. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. You've already built your success. What made you want to jump into a new venture?
Yeah, man. If you would have told me what it was going to take to get here 3 years ago, I probably wouldn't have done it. To be honest with you. But going back to what we talked about earlier in regards to the two sons, right, with alcoholic father, one going one way, one going the other. This was another thing I learned from my dad. Like he taught me my entrepreneurial spirit, but one thing that he didn't do was a lot of his ideas or inventions he just never executed on. A big book full of great ideas that he just never pulled the trigger on. And, dying with regret is probably my biggest fear. And I think it was more so that propelled me, other than, I have a real problem with having a large network. And to your point of like, I am very intentional with my time and who I spend it with. And it's somewhat strategic in the fact that I really want to have a good time. I want to advance my business. I want to level up. So I do have to actually be very intentional with the people that I'm around. And because I have such a large network and because there's so much manual process in that, like my biggest thing is like when I'm in person, I'm really good. Like people like me. I like the time. It's business gets done, friendships get made, and I sold everything I owned back in 2021, besides 3 suitcases, all my material belongings, and traveled the world. And I kept running into people all over the world, like literally in Asia and Australia, Hawaii. Like I'm solo traveling here, and I'm like, man, this is crazy how many people I'm actually running into are just missing by a day that I would have rather have met up with someone rather than sitting at a bar or a restaurant by myself or going on a tour or whatever. So anyway, I'm like, there is nothing out there that's fixing this. It's like I might post something on Instagram and or LinkedIn or Facebook, and it's like that's still right now and the past, but nothing is forward thinking, at least without having a ton of manual effort done, that would let me know if I'm ever going to be in the same city as someone that I already know and trust and would actually like to meet up with again. If we're ever going to align, schedules in the same city, I'd get an alert. So I decided to build it, and I decided that I wasn't going to stop until either I built it or someone else fixed my problem, because I know if I solve that one problem, I'll make more money, I'll have better relationships, and that's the whole name of the game.
Yeah, no, I love it. Talk to us a little bit more about this app, because I always say that like the greatest thing about this podcast, you'll be episode 541 to put it in context with how many conversations I've had. There's not a city, at least in the United States, that I can't go to and not know people. Right now, sometimes we miss each other. Sometimes they're not in town because they travel a lot as well. But the idea of knowing who's in town when I'm there would be such a game changer as far as, continuing to build those strong relationships and continuing to grow my network and who can I grab a cigar with in this town and whatever the case may be. Right. So tell us a little bit more in depth about how this app works and what you're looking to do with it going forward.
Yeah. And going back on, I wish I would have never included app in the actual name because it gets lost in the millions of apps out there that fail. But what we're building is honestly revolutionary tech. It's a very simple tech though. It's kind of like, why hasn't this been done? Obviously, the technology itself is not simple, but you take your current list of contacts that are in your phone, you'll upload them, you'll get rid of the ones you don't, and update the ones that you do. Obviously, you have people in your phone. Most people have some sort of creative way to uh, CRMify their contact list with emojis or whatever, and you're able to actually go clean up your current contacts in your CRM and update where these people actually live, not where their area code is or where their last address was. And then you set your base location, mine being in Chicago right now, and then you link your email that picks up your travel, and it suggests trips as it finds them. And then you literally just pick who you want to share it with. At this point, as soon as the trips align or someone's going to be in your city and they book it, it's not like Find My Friends or Snapchat where it's like right now. That might work in the social world, but in the business world, you can't just land in someone's city and say, hey, I want a meeting.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, I'm working. No,
Yeah.
but
I'm busy.
it was like, hey, you want to grab a drink, then that's a different thing. That's a social thing. And, not that you can't use this for social, but, we're really attacking the business professionals. You start to think about all the interactions you have and the time and money you've spent to obtain these contacts in your phone that you're not doing anything with. And it's because there's so much effort and noise out there. I mean, think about all the LinkedIn requests, the inboxes, like you almost don't want to even go on there anymore because you don't even know who is who.
Yeah.
And now this gives you the ability to sort through the people you actually care about. And then it just runs in the background, just consistently presenting these opportunities to you to, just like a text or an email would be that says, hey, you guys are going to be in the same city. And then what you do from there is totally up to you. And, it's funny because I'm not at all in the corporate world. And I've, been in some partnership conversations with some big corporations, and, watching how the corporate people interact with each other is just funny because they don't like to exchange phone numbers, right? Because obviously there's dynamics of married, male, female, like it's just weird. So it's like, hey, add me on LinkedIn. Well, cool. But then that follow up afterwards is just like very inefficient. Like you got to inbox them. Hey, it was great meeting you. Like totally want to like set up a Zoom and keep talking. And then it becomes aggressive if it's like, hey, when are you going to be in Chicago? Let me know when you're going to be in Chicago next. And then it becomes weird if they actually come to Chicago and they don't text you and you're like, hey, I see you in Chicago, you didn't text me. And now it's just, so what this actually created was social lubricant for these people.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, you both met at this conference and you both are going to be in the same city in 2 weeks. And it creates like, oh, hey, you're going to be in Atlanta too. We should grab a drink.
Yeah. And it's so true, especially in the world we live in now. And you talking about LinkedIn. First of all, don't ever message me on LinkedIn. I saw you just sent me a request. It was probably a couple of days ago. I don't check it often because what I found on an app like that is you connect and immediately they're in your inbox trying to sell you something, right? And I'm just like, I can't live there. And if you're trying to meet up with me through LinkedIn, I probably think you're trying to sell me something. So if you're able to create some tech for people to connect and continue that relationship in a symbiotic way, right, to help grow your business or whatever the case may be, I think that that's such a fascinating way because we live in such a crazy world where it's so fast paced. If you're not intentional about, like you said, having that social lubrication, making it easier for them to connect, it's never going to happen. So I'm so glad that you're building this app. What's the name of it? Tell everybody, and when can they start downloading it?
Yeah, so it's pronounced there, THERE, but it's actually spelled THR just for legal purposes. It's live right now. Over the next 3 weeks, we plan on having it in a very good spot where it actually works. So our real go to market is December 1st. We've got some awesome partnerships that are ready to go. We've started our fundraising. One thing I wanted to mention too is you learn this the hard way. You hear about this stuff, but especially when it comes to you would call this a networking, social networking app of some sort. But it sounds like a great idea unless all your friends are on it. All your business colleagues are on it. Well, we launched back in January actually that way, and we realized we had the cold start problem, which is it's a two-sided network. These alerts don't work unless there's people on it connecting.
Yeah.
So we actually were able to fix that problem by way of being able to send your contacts these future proximity alerts by way of SMS, and also be able to subscribe to people's trips that they want to make public, to your point of like, hey, here's my upcoming travel, and you post it on LinkedIn or Facebook because you actually do have some time when you're going to be in those cities and you'd like to connect. Well, now it gives non-users the ability to subscribe to Justin's trips. They'll get a text message if you ever go to their city, and they'll get an email for every other trip that you've booked that you want to make public. So therefore, they're reaching out to you on LinkedIn now saying, hey, I saw you're going to be in Dallas. Would you mind setting up a meeting so we could talk about it? And then we could meet up in Dallas if it makes sense. It's much more natural conversation than these long messages you're talking about that are clearly spam.
Yeah, yeah, and I love it. I'm gonna download it because I travel enough, and it's one of those things. A lot of times I'll say like Austin, right? I know 50 people in Austin, and so it's like, hey, if you're the proactive one, you can't get mad at me if I don't reach out to you, right? So it also kind of stops that awkwardness as well. Speaking of, you said you're in Chicago. Chicago is my favorite city, hands down. Love it, foodie town. How long have you been in Chicago?
1 year. So Chicago trapped me. I'm actually from Florida. I lived in Florida all my life, and did my whole nomadic journey, and then landed in Texas, actually in Austin. So I have a great crew in Austin, and then moved to Dallas to kind of get our agency back in person, open up some offices there. But what I realized about what I don't like about Texas is the summer heat.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
escaped to Chicago, summer of 2023, was literally living in the Ritz here, out on the boat, all summer. And man, Chicago summers, they'll trick you, because I moved here in November and winter hit. And now we're coming up on November, and I will not be renewing my lease. I'm going to throw everything in storage and go to Florida. It's my 40th in December. It's going to jump around Peru, South America, Central America, all, during the cold months at least, while I'm getting this app launched.
I love it, man. Living the dream life. What's been your favorite restaurant in Chicago? I have a buddy who owns a couple of restaurants. Let's see if you name one.
Let's see, man. There's so many of them. Just because it's really close. I love a good steak, man. Bavette's is great. Adelina, buddy owns that one. Let's see, man. I don't know.
Have you been to
Trade.
Prime and Provision?
I haven't. It's actually across the street, and I just walked by it. I just never stopped at it, because I'm very habitual, and my buddies, they've been here for 15 years. They kind of have their spots where everyone knows them, so that's where I just kind of end up most of the times.
I hear that, man. So you had mentioned earlier how your biggest fear is dying with regret. So I want to ask you a question that I ask many people on this show. I want you to imagine the end of your life. Everything that you've built and are continuing to build, it's wiped off the face of the planet. And you can only be remembered for one sentence. What would you want that sentence to be?
Showed up. Just show up.
I love it, man. That's a great response, because most people don't show up for themselves or for others, and it's terrible to watch. But so I love that answer. And I want to ask you a two-part question here that I ask every single person. The first part is, what is your definition of success? The second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
I think success is just true freedom. That comes in different forms for different people. For me, that's the time freedom, the financial freedom, and the ability to do it with whomever I want to do it with. I think what I do to make sure that happens is, again, I show up. I'm currently on day 665 days straight in the gym without missing a day.
Wow.
I think, that morning routine is a very clear and strong guardrail for myself. So I like to go out, have fun, eat, drink with the best of them. I'm actually down 70 pounds since this whole journey. And, I think that translates. So the gym in the morning, showing up, that's number one. Really, really meticulous with my lists and calendars, making sure that, I stay organized, and then being intentional about my network, the people that I love and care about, and the people that I want to get to know. I pour a lot into them, and I think having a strong network and the other two are really really kind of all go hand in hand with creating that success I was talking about.
I love it. So you mentioned earlier about, having good values. I would love to hear a couple of your core values that keep you locked in on those goals that we were just talking about. Congratulations on the 70 pounds and the 660 whatever days you said. What keeps you locked in? What are some of your core values that you live by?
Yeah, I mean, integrity is a big one for me. It's like, when no one's looking, what are you doing, right? And then being able to just be honest with people. I think those come with the same, and communicate. And then just, again, back to just the servant heart, giving and leading from the front. Those would be I guess, the ones right off the bat. I think I just kind of try to max out on everything I do. I try to just get 1% better every day, and show up, and just try to be the better version of myself that I can, that I was not the day before. So yeah, man, I don't have them written out like I should. Probably should get back to that, but yeah.
No, dude, I love it. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question. But before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? How do they get more information on the tech that you're building? What's all the good stuff? Because I know I was looking at some of the things, but as far as looking for investors and all the fun stuff, talk about that.
Yeah, you could, I'm not an influencer by any means, but Instagram is Creekmore with 2 underscores. Eric at thr-app.com. Yeah, right now we're looking for strategic investors to get in on this early phase. We don't feel like we're going to need the whole 2 million, but we are raising $2 million on a safe note. We've also created a crowd fund on WeFunder, so you can find us on there. That'll allow just the everyday investor to be able to get it in for, just like a DraftKings bet or something like that. But yeah, we're looking for strategic investors, people to get involved. Obviously, get in, use the app, give us feedback, and then strategic partners. So we've got a lot of large organizations, enterprises that are going to be big partners for us. So other than that, man, I mean, that's what I got to offer.
Can you see influencer in your future? Dropping 70 pounds, getting into the tech space, well spoken. I could see it happen.
I thought I wanted that, and then I started doing it actually for a little bit of time, and I realized it's actually the opposite of what I want. So I just I want to build things that I can, let those things shine. I'll be the person behind the curtain.
I love it, man. I love it. Like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Biggest moment of growth. I think that would be the transformation that I directly had on my mother, actually. So my mother works for my financial services company, and, late life divorce, overweight, never been in a sales position, no retirement, no job to fall back on, because she worked at the Space Center. That obviously, once they shut down, but really having to tear her down was probably the hardest thing I had to do in my life. Seeing your mother cry is not always easy, but seeing her cry often, in a way that I had to tear her down so that I could build her back up. And now seeing her in this new light, and what she's been able to do for herself, not only personally, but, financially, and this basically new person she became. I think it translates into kind of my own life and my business, and it's just a good story to tell and share. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, man. Eric, thank you so much for sharing your time with me and my audience, dude. This was great. Super excited for what you're building. I'm definitely hopping in and checking it out, dude. This was awesome. Thank you.
Love it, man. Appreciate you.